TCS Innovation Forum is hosted by TCS Co-Innovation Network and chaired by TCS CTO K. Anant Krishnan. It provides a platform to collaborate and innovate with technology researchers and peers across industries through panel discussions and interactive sessions. At TCS, enriching customer experience is not a last mile cosmetic deliverable. We understand the excitement and challenges our customers face. We explore concepts for enriching customer and end user experience from ideas through software design and delivery. Ashok Krish now talks about the internal customers and the proliferation of social media within TCS.
Enriching customer experience is again a subject that we at the labs have been looking at over the last 3 years, and TCS is increasingly starting to look at that. And there's broadly two dimensions that we want to cover. So there's broadly two kinds of customers, the internal as well as the external. The internal customer is something that I'm going to be covering during my talk. And then we have panelists who are going to be speaking about the external customer as well. Again, there's actually two kinds of external customers. So one is, I call them the virtual employee, which is most companies today work with partners. They work with companies like TCS, they work with other partners, suppliers. So there is in some sense a virtual employee that we cannot forget about when we think about end customer experience. There is of course the end customer himself. So that's the end customer side. And so we will be exploring a couple of key things, which is broadly two important trends, which is that the information worker is becoming the web worker at the employee front, and consumers are becoming prosumers on the consumer internet front. And most enterprise experiences, end user experiences, just simply do not deliver that way. So what's actually happening is, for the first time in the history of IT, traditionally, enterprises were at the cutting edge of innovation. They always had the latest and greatest technology, and it's after that they became consumer technology. Because of the internet and because of the social web, for the first time, the user experiences and what people are able to do online is far outstripping the productivity inside an enterprise. So the insight that I want to share is that the return on investment on simply buying collaboration technologies and Web 2.0 technologies to improve the end user experience is not quite delivering what you expect it to deliver. The very first problem that we addressed, the very first end user experience issue that we had inside TCS was one of expertise location. And all of you know that as an organization grows, your ability to find out who an expert is drastically reduced. And so one of the things that we did was introduce social technologies in the context of expertise finding. So anybody asks a question, anybody sort of answers a question, there's voting and rating, there's a virtual currency, there's badges, and it's pretty soon became quite the most popular platform inside TCS. If we are in the digital native kind of an organization, it's very crucial that your innovation pipeline include these digital natives, and traditionally it's never done that. So one of the things that we did, and this is actually the newer version that's going out, but so it's primarily a social ideas platform where anybody submits an idea, you can invest in an idea, there's a virtual currency, you can bet share, you can buy shares in an idea, there's a prediction market type system. And it's a distributed ecosystem where some people can fund ideas and some people can suggest ideas. And so what's also interesting is that we got a lot of senior executives to post challenges as opposed to just getting ideas. So it brings me to another important insight, which is that when you actually want to leverage a lot of these social technologies within the enterprise, it's easy to get some of your youngest employees on board, because all you have to do is just introduce it and people will lap it up. The idea is to give people the tools to manage personal knowledge and personal collaboration, and then organizational knowledge is actually a side effect. So I think that the paradigm for end user experience that we're moving towards inside the enterprise is one of greater personalization. The system then sort of helps them by learning what they're good at, and so that's really where all of this is going inside the enterprise. I want to sort of summarize this into 4 memes that you can take away. So the first thing is that most organizations, you need to augment structured collaboration with unstructured collaboration. That's a very, very important end user experience theme that we're seeing. There's certain kinds of jobs, there's certain kinds of business processes, there's certain kinds of roles that needs this sort of social collaboration on top of structured collaboration. It's not all roles. The second important meme is that within your own companies, within your own kinds of the employees and the roles that you have, tacit knowledge is best managed by encouraging serendipitous discovery. Third meme, of course, is that since we're on the subject of the digital native, increasingly, we're actually seeing this change where this is now being called continuous partial attention. Right? And now this is a fact of life, not just for your employees, it's a fact of life for your customers as well. There is value in encouraging continuous partial attention because a lot of the younger generation is actually good at it. So what now happens is that if you're an enterprise that is not cognizant of this, what we call the cognitive surplus that you have, which is the ability of your employees and your customers to be more than just someone who buys your products or someone who works for you in a specific role. There is this potential to tap into the cognitive surplus of your organization if you build social tools and deliver it to your employees. The idea is that you don't make an assumption of who an expert is, and so the wider you spread your net, the more useful it is. The last thing is, of course, that the future lies not with project teams, but with smart models. There's some key takeaways on the employee customer experience. There is this increasing blurring of the internal and the external. The second aspect, of course, is that before you embark on buying a bunch of tools like Jive or any off-the-shelf tools or invest in new collaboration technologies, it's important to understand the different kinds of cognitive surplus that you have in the different roles that you have. It varies, and so for a lot of knowledge enterprises, it's one way, and for certain other enterprises, it might be very different, right? The third thing is that we've learned is that fundamentally user experiences now, and this is true not just for internal but for the external as well, designing for intrinsic motivation is key. Hitting the sweet spot between structured and unstructured collaboration is going to be key. Most Web 2.0 style collaboration is not about tools, it's not about buying technologies, but it's really about looking at what you do today, the apps that you currently use, and then you weave a lot of these social experiences around it. And most off-the-shelf tools will not let you do that. And we are in fact working with a couple of verticals to sort of test this idea now. Last thing, of course, had it not been for people like Anant who would go post challenges and ask questions, the participation would have tapered off. And that's we heard that earlier in the day as well. And the reason for that is that fundamentally, again, this needs to be a perpetual beta exercise. A last point, eventually end user experiences need to be personalized. May it be end customer, may it be agents, or may it be your extended enterprise. Customers are becoming prosumers. So a robust voice of the customer program is pretty much crucial. So you need to do that. How is it that you can actually tap into the innovative capabilities of your partners? All of your suppliers, and not just within your employee ecosystem, but actually customers as well as your extended enterprise.
Brian McDonald throws light on current problems around usability and the other challenges that people face.
We market directly to consumers using the internet, television, direct mail, traditional direct marketing channels. The interesting challenge for us is a lot of things we talked about today. In terms of delivering a customer experience, it's moving to the web and mobile and iPad at lightning fast speed. We struggle with infrastructure, we struggle with an IT mindset that's used to taking 6 months to a year for development as opposed to 6 days. We've focused primarily up to this point on establishing what we call transactional excellence. And that means when I come to get a quote for insurance, how quickly can I get you through that process? Do I have the right mix of helpful tools and information readily available to you so that you can get through a very complicated process without being annoying? We do have chat. We do selectively interface into the user experience with a proactive chat engagement to help the consumer when we detect it. It looks like the consumer's having difficulties. And then the call center still plays a very important part in our customer experience. A lot of people want to they shop and want to get quotes online and through their mobile devices, et cetera, but when it comes to buying the policy, they tend to still want to talk to somebody. They don't want to just call their Allstate or their State Farm or Hartford agent. We're now struggling, again, with technology. They don't tend to work real well with our back-end system environments. Our business processes are also a problem. If you go way back to the way insurance was bought in the past, filling out long, complicated forms of information, they moved into call centers where the call center interviews tended to just take you through the long application that you used to have to fill out. Then we moved that long application onto the web. But now an interesting challenge is you can't fit 42 questions into an iPhone application where you can present 2 or 3 questions at a time. So it's actually forcing the industry and the business to reevaluate its business model in terms of what's the value of all of those pieces of data that I need to capture. Can I build a product and a user experience that I can provide pricing and enough differentiated pricing for, in 10 or 15 questions as opposed to 35 or 40. So there is somewhat of a transformation going on, at least in our business, in terms of different aspects of the business evaluating, changing the way they're doing things to create a better user experience, because on an iPhone or a BlackBerry, that seems to be the way some of the new generation wants to do business. So, and that's another challenge that we have is creating flexibility in the user experiences themselves. Older generation tends to want to still do things in a traditional way. The newer generation doesn't want to invest a lot of time. They have short attention spans, so they want it now. They want it quickly, and it needs to be very intuitive. So the one-size-fits-all model, which tends to be where a lot of us is also losing favor as well. So again, the underlying technology needed for us to be able to test and deliver different user experiences to different audiences is very important for us and critical for us to be able to get to keep up with changing consumer demands.
Vikram Saukar now talks about the ROI of social media as well as the role of social media in a company.
And I came in to start up a division that would publish the next generation of online education and online textbooks for the world's science students. And as Ashok mentioned earlier, we've used social media and the possibilities of educational collaboration as our foundation for that. So social media, as you can see, is the basic blueprint of how we're trying to grow a new business in an industry that's dominated by $2 billion publishers, such as the one that I came from when I left behind 800 sales reps to go and start up a division that had none. So getting good at social media was a mission-critical function for us. But what I'm going to do now, and I'm happy to speak more about our specific work and questions if you have any, is to try to sketch a general framework, as I think about it, for what is the business value of social media, what is the ROI. And I think this is important because social media is expensive. It really is. Number one, it's constantly evolving. So whatever you invest in today will be obsolete tomorrow. So you're always sinking cost. Number two, it requires the kind of expertise that we generally don't have on staff. So moving into the social media space and getting good on it involves recruiting new talent and training them. It's an expensive proposition. And number three, the technologies themselves are increasingly sophisticated. And yes, over the last 10 years, we've brought the cost of software development down in some ways. But when you're working on the leading edge, that cost has actually gone up, in my opinion, because you're competing against giants like Google and Apple and people who do things really well. And if you want to do things really well, then you have to spend a lot of money. So I'm going to sketch out 6 possible roles that I see that social media can play in a company. Number 1 is keeping up, 2 is exploring, 3 is developing, 4 is marketing, 5 is expanding reach, and 6 is product. And let me speak about each of those. One value that social media can have to the enterprise is simply keeping up with the Joneses. Right? So for us as an information company, we just can't not have an iPad app today. It makes us look obsolete, and that makes us look bad. It's a hygiene factor. Being on the cutting edge is a hygiene factor for business. The problem is it's a really expensive hygiene factor. The second, I'm trying to move up the value chain for us as a business, is exploring. We want to find out from customers what their pain points are. That gives us insight into what the future of the industry can be. Third is developing. Once you've listened well enough to settle on some ideas for product lines that you can come up with that will differentiate you, you can actually use social media as a sandbox in place of very expensive kinds of focus group and market research. So as we move up the value chain, social media is a way for us to refine, test, and develop our next generation of products. Number fourth is marketing. You've developed your product, you need to get the word out. Social media is a great way to get the word out to the people who you know are in your target demographic and psychographic and build stronger affinity with them. I'll return to that in a second. This one is obvious. We're all pretty good at this now. And the fifth is expanding reach. Social media is a way to reach new audiences. And sixth, at the top of the value chain, is social media can be your product. And this is a little abstract, but particularly if you're an information company, social media isn't just a way to market your product. Social media can be your product. What can you develop to distribute through Twitter, through Facebook, through other kinds of social media that is itself saleable or is monetizable in some way? We already have business structures in place to evaluate how much we should spend on these things. We already have a basic set of metrics around how much we're willing to spend as a basic cost of business. We already have measures of marketing ROI. We already have measures of how much we're willing to write off on R&D for exploring and developing. And I think bringing that greater level of rigor to the way we think about social media is something that as an industry we need to develop methodologies for. So I'll briefly close by then talking about the multi-channel question. We just expanded onto mobile and made a big investment in mobile in order to reach students throughout the developing world. And that made sense for us. And I would say that playing with multiple channels is also very expensive. There's a serious investment in the moving from the internet to the mobile internet because there are 75 different form factors on mobile phones that you have to support. There's only really one browser, maybe 4 different kinds of browsers, but there's 75 mobile phones. It's an order of magnitude more complex. iPads are coming down, Kindles are coming down. The complexity is growing over time, so our proposition in moving to the new channels is not a question of an incremental investment. It's almost like rebuilding your business from scratch.
Jeff Haney talks about broad trends in mobility and cross-channel, cross-platform development, and how companies can reuse web development.
Probably what you may or may not realize is that mobile devices and mobile is changing. We think today handhelds as mobiles, but mobility actually is much more than just handheld devices. We see a lot of iPads around the room. That's actually a good indication of where the world's going. Mobile devices are going to overtake PCs very quickly. From a client usage device, the actual PC that we interacted with on a daily basis, that was largely dominated as an ecosystem, as a software platform by Microsoft. And we could largely build to one device. And certainly the browser came along, and that made it even a little bit easier. With this next generation, we're certainly going to still have a device or an internet-based browser, that utility that will run across these different devices, but there'll be many different form factors. In fact, many different screen sizes, and many different ways that you'll interact with these devices and the different capabilities. We call this anywhere computing as an industry. We're going from having 1 or 2 devices that we interact with every day to being able to compute and actually interact with content at any time. And that's changing business models, that's changing interaction models pretty dramatically. We're going to see a lot more biometrics type driven interfaces and visual type interfaces where you're going to actually interact with computers much differently than you actually have traditionally. And context is going to be a lot more, it's going to mean a lot more to us. Your actual presence, the fact that you're physically in a certain location will actually change, that context will actually change the information in the content delivery. Your identity, as we know it, will actually change. We've already seen this happen with the social graph and how the identity is changing sort of purchasing behaviors and influence in marketing decisions. The future actually is going to be technology now augmenting our lives, making us, help us manage our lives much more. And that's the future we're moving towards pretty quickly. It won't be really one device that we'll use. It'll be a variety of devices. When we walk into our homes, there'll be devices that will help us. And that's the future we're moving towards. And that's where your customers are going to be. That's what they're going to expect. And that's what your business partners and your employees are going to be. Mobility is actually dramatically changing the IT architecture. The mobile is going to massively disrupt the way transactions are monetized and the way our lives are dealt with. Today, we still use checks and credit cards, hopefully a lot less checks, a lot more credit cards these days, but the mobile wallet is going to become very real in the next few years. And that ability to actually have context and awareness and presence when you're actually making payments and actually augmenting those things are going to really change the way that people interact with your companies and your businesses. It's going to afford new ways for new companies to actually create massive technology disruption through that and new business models as well. So we, of course, have a solution for everybody. Our solution's called AppCellerator Titanium, and our premise has been really the last 15 years, IT organizations have been heavily invested in web and web skills, web platform, web tools, and it's hard to imagine the entire world throwing that out to actually go back towards lower level programming interfaces and things like that. So what we've done, we've created a way that IT organizations like yourselves can use web skills, web technologies, JavaScript, et cetera, to actually build native applications across native environments. And we call that Titanium. It's a platform, a software platform, a set of tools, compilers, et cetera, that allow you to actually do that, efficiently use your IT resources, or work with companies like TCS who are building applications for you. We have a bunch of really cool, I won't go through all these, but we have a great platform capabilities that allow you to actually create native experiences across these types of different devices. We have a bunch of cloud products on top that are integrated deeply into the technology stack that allow you to do things like analytics. You understand it's important as you start to invest in these new types of ways of reaching customers or delivering content and applications. We think it's very important that you actually deliver native experiences on those platforms, that you don't try to create a homogenized experience that this looks the same across every type of device. That doesn't work really well, and it won't really match your customer experience requirements. We think it's important that you can use your team you have today or the partners that you have today to actually deliver this. And then really what we keep hearing, we heard this today as a general theme, not just about mobility, but it's web development speed. How do I get to market very quickly, very iteratively? And certainly we really focus on that as really allowing you to actually get to market very fast across different platforms.
For any feedback and queries, do write to us. For more information, you can visit our websites.